Alrighty, welcome back to the study of Revelations 101. Now, tonight we're going to finish up with the Old Testament, and what I'd like to start with is the day of the Lord, finishing up with that. Now, this episode and last episode, I wanted to cover the last four books of the Old Testament, and the material that I was going to cover will be in both these segments, the last one and this one. So, and for time's sake, I was able to cover the main points, which was the millennial reign of Christ and then the day of the Lord. Now, this is something we really don't cover too much in Bible studies or in church service or anything else. It's the day of the Lord. It is the day of wrath. Now, we know that we have the seven seals, then we have the seven trumpets and the seven bowls of wrath, and then when Christ comes back, it's the day of the Lord. It is the total uh, wrath of God. He lets it all out, and it's a doozy. Now, this is where we see that the Battle of Armageddon. We see that they're all wiped out. If you've taken the mark of the beast, you're dead. That's your deadline right there. Also, we see the Antichrist and the false prophet are going to be thrown into the lake of fire alive, and then we're going to see Satan that's chained and bound for 1,000 years. Then we see after this the millennial reign of Christ. He comes in and takes his kingdom. Now, one thing that I didn't cover in the last segment, the very last verses that I read, you'll see that when the remnant comes out of all the nations, and they're told to go to worship the Feast of Tabernacles. And if you refuse, you did not receive rain, and then there was other plagues that you would get if you didn't. So we see that certain families and nations will refuse. So even Satan is out of the picture. We still see not everybody's on board with Jesus during his millennial reign. That's something we really don't cover. But we see in scriptures things that were brought up that are not normally really researched and really get and discuss and study on. So hopefully you've learned a few things that you're seeing. The Old Testament is very valuable in prophecy. Always remember, the Old Testament is the foreshadowing of Christ in from his conception to his millennial reign. It's all there in the Old Testament. When we get done with the study, I'm going to speed it up a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do another segment, and that's going to be in the New Testament. I've cut a lot of that down to just the bare essentials. We've studied enough to where you should have a good comprehension going into the study of Revelation. It's just that I don't want to beat a dead horse. I don't want to give so much information you get lost in it. We have really got a good grasp when we get into Revelation to where you will have a good understanding. A lot of it is going to make sense. There are things there that are not revealed yet. We don't know. And I'll be the first one to tell you there are things we don't know. We get into trouble with commentaries, especially with ministers and pastors. You start speaking about stuff that God ain't talked about. It hasn't been revealed yet. And people are so afraid to say, I don't know. And I'm not one of them. There are things there I don't understand. The closer we get to it, and when it happens, things will be revealed. Now, the reason I'm teaching the way I am because of so many scriptures. Some of you are going to go through it. I personally believe that the last generation has been born, that tribulation is not that far off. I will not set a date and time because I don't know. If Jesus don't know, I sure don't know. But we know the seasons we're heading there. We're seeing things take place. Uh, there are a few more things that we're looking for. And I'm going to touch up on about four things, and then we'll get cracking. Okay. Also, we're going to do apostasy in this one too. Okay. There's four events that we're yet waiting to see happen. We don't know when they're going to take place, but we know these have not been fulfilled yet. We know Ezekiel 38:39. We know that's the war of Gog and Magog. We know that it's going to be Turkey and Iran involved in this, and there'll be other nations involved. Those are the countries that do not border Israel. And we know that Russia is going to be a hook in the jaw, dragged against their will to go in this, but it's going to happen. We're also looking at the Psalms 83 war. Those are the countries that surround the borders of Israel. That has not taken place yet. Isaiah 17, which is the total destruction of Damascus, Syria, where it'll never be inhabited again. And the last one will be Jeremiah 47, and that deals with the total destruction of Iran. That's Elam. It'll be destroyed. They'll become refuse of the world. We know that Iran is part of the Confederacy with Russia and Turkey and other nations. But we know in the futures that Jeremiah 47 says Iran will be, there'll be a major something happen there, and we know that they'll become refugees of the world. Now, those are events that have not taken place. That's just something to wet your whistle to show that the Old Testament it's alive. Okay, so let's get cracking. The day of the Lord. Now, we know throughout the Old Testament, the day of the Lord is prophesied everywhere. It's amazing. So let's just show that it's also a day of wrath. It's called many different names, but we'll discover those as we go through. Okay, let's get started. Day of the Lord, Psalms 110, verse 5. The Lord is at thy right hand, shall strike through kings in the day of his wrath. Proverbs 6, verse 34. For jealousy is the rage of a man, therefore he will not spare in the day of vengeance. Proverbs 11, verse 4. Riches profit not in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivereth from death. So we see it's a day of wrath. We're not promised wrath. Remember that. Isaiah chapter 2, verse 12. For the day of the Lord of hosts shall be upon everyone that is proud, lofty, and upon everyone that is lifted up, and he shall be brought low. Isaiah 13, verse 6. How ye, for the day of the Lord is at hand, it shall come as destruction from the Almighty. Isaiah 13, verse 9. Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, cruel both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. Isaiah 13, verse 13. Therefore I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall remove her out of her place. In the wrath of the Lord of hosts, and in the day of his fierce anger. Ezekiel 7, verse 19. They shall cast their silver in the street, and their gold shall be removed. Their silver and their gold shall not be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord. Here we see the word wrath again. They shall not satisfy their soul, neither fill their bowls, because it is the stumbling block of their iniquity. Joel 2, verse 31. The sun shall be turned into darkness. Take key of this verse. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, for the great and the terrible day of the Lord comes. Zephaniah 1, verse 15. That day is a day of wrath, wrath again, a day of trouble and distress, a day of wastefulness and desolation, a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness. Zephaniah 1, verse 18. Neither their silver nor their gold shall be able to deliver them in the day of the Lord's wrath, but the whole land shall be devoured by the fire of his jealousy, for he shall make even a speedy riddance of all them that dwell in the land. Okay. Zephaniah 2, verse 2. before the decree brings forth, before the day pass as the chaff, before the fierce anger of the Lord comes upon you, before the day of the Lord's anger come upon you. Okay. Zephaniah 2, verse 3, seek ye the Lord, all you meek of the earth, which have wrought his judgment. Seek righteousness, seek meekness, that it may be ye shall be hid in the day of the Lord's anger. So we're seeing here that the day of the Lord is a day of wrath. Now we know that after the seventh trumpet is sounded, we know that the saints are called up, they're harvested, and then we see the beginning of the seven bowls of wrath. Seven bowls of wrath. At the completion of that, we see that the day of the Lord, the day of wrath, where God comes out and he just rolls out his full anger and his wrath, and he don't hold back. Okay. So I'm going to end with it. Now also in the next segment, I'm going to add, to start it out, because I'm not going to make it a very long section, just cover the key points, and then we're going into the book of Revelation. Now, the key thing about that is I'm going to show you the seven feasts, how they correspond with Jesus. All those feasts are somehow a foreshadowing of Christ. And then I'll show that, and it'll be very brief, but that will be in the very next segment. Okay, let's do apostasy. I thought it was important because of today we're seeing apostasy. It is so bad in the church. It is gaining ground. We see it's just horrible. So the best thing that I learned to do is discuss it, because it's going to be important, especially we get into the first few chapters of the book of Revelation, because it'll be the seven letters of the churches, and this will be relevant. Okay. So let's get started with apostasy. Apostasy is the falling away from the faith, false worship. Okay. Apostates are the people who will look like servants of righteousness. We're going to read that in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 12 through 15, but will lead others into false Christianity. Matthew chapter 7, verses 15 to 23. So let's read those scriptures. But what I do, that I will do, that I may cut off occasions from them which desire occasion, that wherein they glory, that they may be found even as we. For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. Matthew chapter 7, verses 15 through 23. Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves. We've read this a million times, but I tell you what, you need to really heed this. Ye shall know them by their fruits. We talked about fruits before, producing fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Wherefore by their fruits ye shall know them. Not every one that saith to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? And in thy name have cast out devils? And in thy name done many wonderful works? And then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. Okay. Professing Christians that are not justified will be quick to follow apostates. We'll see that in 2 Peter. Excuse me. I got ahead of myself, so excuse me. The church. is where this will take place and where the gospel truth will be distorted. It'll be Acts chapter 20, verse 29. So let's read that real quick. I'm going to add 2 verses to that. Let's make it Acts chapter 20, verses 28 through 30. Be a little bit more clear by going more in depth. It's just instead of that one verse. Take heed, therefore, unto yourselves and to all the flock over which the Holy Ghost has made you overseers, to feed the church of God, which he had purchased with his own blood. For I know this, that after my departure shall grievous wolves enter in among you, not sparing the flock. Also of your own selves shall men arise, that's out of your own ranks, speaking perverse things to draw away disciples after them. And sometimes we see that in a church split. Okay. Now let's go down to professing Christians that are not justified will be quick to follow apostates. That's 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. Okay. But there are false prophets also among people, even as there shall be false teachers among you who privily shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that brought them, and bring upon themselves swift destruction. And many shall follow their precarious ways, by reason of whom the way of truth shall be evil spoken of. And through covetousness shall they faint words, which make merchandise of you, whose judgment now of a long time lingered not, and their damnation slumbered not. Man, we just see that's a key verse that we see today. We see our church, we're seeing it change to where we're changing God to a she, where the LGBTQ open stuff that's going on, where we're changing the Lord's Prayer to her. I can't even talk. It just frustrates me to see how much we have perverted God's word in today's churches, in all denominations. Even Southern Baptists have caught up in this. Every denomination is caught up, and this is one that we just see it is happening today. Okay, let's go into the form of the great apostasy shall come as a revival in the form of godliness without power. That is 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 7. This know also that in the last day perilous time shall come, for men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, and but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. For this sort are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women, laden with sins, led away with diverse lusts, ever learning but never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. That's a church today, too. Okay. The time will come when Christians will not put up with sound doctrines. They will turn away from the truth and run after myths. That's 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 3 through 4. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lust shall they heap to themselves teachers having itchy ears, and they shall turn away their ears from the truth and shall be turned into fables. And we see, okay. Next, we're going to go into I take a breather for a minute. Okay, Satan's devices for apostasy. This is how we see counterfeits here. Okay, let's see. Let's start with counterfeit gods. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3 through 4. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalted himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he, as God, sitteth in the temple of God, shewing himself that he is God. Okay. Counterfeit Jesus. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 4. For if he that cometh preaches another Jesus, whom we have not preached, or if ye receive another spirit which ye have not received, or another gospel which ye have not accepted, ye might well bear with him. Be careful. Okay. Next is going to be counterfeit Christ. That's Matthew chapter 24, verse 24. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall shew great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. A lot of signs and wonders. Okay. Counterfeit spirits. That's 1 John chapter 4, verse 1. And we'll do verses 1 through 3. I'm gonna add to that. Okay. Counterfeit spirits, 1 John chapter 4, verses 1. And I'm changing stuff around as I'm going through. You got to read above and below scriptures, and sometimes just one scripture just ain't going to cut it, and this is a time for it. Okay, so beloved, believe not in every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. Hereby know ye the fruit of God, or spirit of God, excuse me. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is of God. And every spirit that confess not that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is not of God. And this is that spirit of Antichrist. Thereof ye have heard that it should come, and even now already it is in the world. Okay. We also have 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1. Now speaketh the Spirit. Now the Spirit speaketh especially that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. Okay, now we got counterfeit apostles. And we're going to see that in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 13. Okay. For as such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transform themselves into the apostles of Christ. So we've seen that before. Okay. Next, we're going to go into counterfeit prophets. Be 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. But there were false prophets also among the people, even there that shall be false teachers among you, who privily shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that brought them, and bring them upon themselves swift destruction. And many shall follow their pernicious ways, by reason of whom the truth shall be evil spoken of. So we've seen some of these scriptures before. It's just showing it in a different aspect. Okay. And through covenants that shall they faint words with which make merchandise of you, whose judgment now of a long time linger not, and their damnation slumbereth not. Okay. Also, we have 1 John chapter 4, verse 1. That's also a counterfeit prophet. So, beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. Counterfeit ministers. We're going to see 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 14 through 15. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as a minister of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. Okay, next we're going to go into counterfeit gospels. That's going to be Galatians chapter 1, verses 6 through 9. I marvel that ye are so soon removed from him that called you into the grace of Christ into another gospel, which is not another, but there be some that trouble you and would pervert the gospel of Christ. Be through we, or an angel from heaven. Excuse me, sometimes my writing's not that good. I get messed up. I can't read my own writing sometimes, so excuse me. But through we or an angel from heaven preach any other gospel unto you that in which we have preached unto you, let him be accursed. As we said before, so say I now again. If any man preaches another gospel unto you that they ye be received, let him be accursed. Okay. Counterfeit miracles. We're going to see 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 9. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders. Okay, we're going to see Revelations chapter 13, verse 13 through 15. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he has power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image of the beast which had wound by the sword and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, and the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Okay. And next was going to be counterfeit worship, and that's going to be Mark chapter 7, verses 6 through 7. He answered and said unto them, well hath Elias prophesied of you hypocrites, as it is written, this people honored me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. Howbeit in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Wow. Revelations chapter 13, verses 3 through 4. And I saw one of his head as it was wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him? And the last one would be Revelations chapter 14, verses 9 through 10. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast in his image, and received his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink the wine of the wrath of God, day of the Lord, which is poured out with mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. Mark of the beast, and like fire. No getting out of it. So, do a quick review. I hope here on the apostasy, we've seen what apostasy is, apostates. It happens at the church. Some things happen with professing Christians to form the time. And we see Satan's devices for apostasy, counterfeit gods, counterfeit Jesus, counterfeit Christ, counterfeit spirits, counterfeit apostles, counterfeit prophets, counterfeit ministers, counterfeit gospel, counterfeit miracles, counterfeit worship. So we see here that we're going to see this, especially when we get into the seven churches. And we'll see what Jesus has to say to each and every one of them. Now, I would like to say, I hope you learned something. Now, sometimes I stutter and I bumble because sometimes I can't read my own writings. But I wanted to show you in a format, you're going to make mistakes and it's okay. Quit trying to be perfect. We are just God's people trying to reveal the truth. Now, I could do this in a whole different format, and I could go behind my desk and I can do all kind of things, make it sound pretty, but I'm trying to be an example. You're going to make mistakes. It's okay. I will do this a lot of times. I'm doing it live. I'm not sitting here trying to look pretty and proper because many of you are going to stumble through this, and it's okay. Don't have fear of making mistakes. You're going to. There are no perfect churches, there are no perfect Christians, and there are no perfect studies. We don't always get it right. When you make mistakes, admit that you made mistakes, go back and correct them, and just go on. It's okay. We are just people who love God, who's trying to spread his word and trying to bring the gospel. And we are imperfect people, and God didn't pick perfect people to do stuff. Well, I got to go. Time's out. Love you, and see you in the next segment.